following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hey folks, Brian Keene here. You know, summer's over. We're entering the fall and then the winter. Halloween's coming up, Thanksgiving, and then, of course, the holiday shopping season. Speaking of the holiday shopping season, let me tell you about subculturecorsets.com. They've got everything you need for everyone on your list for this holiday season. Clothing, accessories, gifts, books, you name it, they've got it. They sponsor every show on the Project Entertainment Network, including this one. So please give them your business. Visit subculturecorsets.com.
Project Entertainment Network presents My Favorite Story, an anthology featuring short fiction written by the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network podcasts, with
Mary Sangiovanni and Brian Keene from The Horror Show,
Chuck Border, Aaron Sweet, El Mahore, and Armand Rosamilia of the Mando Method, Jeannie Engel of Origins,
Bizung's Mr. Frank,
Tom Clark from Necrocast, It On, It Cooks, Amber Fallon,
Three Guys with Beards, Christopher Golden, Jim Moore and Jonathan Maybury,
The Buttercup of Doom, Kelly Owen,
Matters of Faith's Jay Wilburn,
John Urbancic of Ink Stains.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology from Project Entertainment Network, available on Kindle, Nook, and soon in paperback from the Project Entertainment Network store.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
And I'm Christopher Golden. And Brian, I almost fear to say Excelsior today because I know you're not well.
I'm not well. I'm sick. But I'm dedicated.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's about your dedication today.
That's right. No, I have a sinus infection that's kicking my ass, and I probably am not delivering the dulcet tones that our listeners, all four of them, have come to expect from me. But I will persevere.
They tune in just to hear you.
Right.
It's funny. You're talking about being sick, and actually, weirdly, there are a few things to me that when I'm sick, at 50, I still think of. And I know this seems like a totally made up segue, but it's not. I mean, like, to me, there's chocolate milkshakes. There's depending how sick I am, right? That's just things that my mom would bring me when I was a kid, when I was sick. And comic books.
Absolutely.
My mom would go to the drugstore. Of course, that's where the comics were in those days. And she'd come home with a stack of literally...
There we go. I'm going to be sneezing through the whole show.
There you go. But she would come home with a stack of literally anything. Like, that's how I read Archie, how I read Richie Rich, Casper, but also, like, Defenders, Avengers, like Spider-Man, Justice League, the Justice League Justice Society crossover issues. That's what I remember having those comics in my hands. I'd be on the sofa, like just lying there reading a stack of comics that she brought home. To me, that's what, and old movies, lying in bed watching old movies.
Yep, that was me too. I'd be in my bedroom in bed, and Mom would bring me chicken soup. I had a little black and white TV, and if I was homesick from school, then pickings were slim. It was usually Days of Our Lives or some game show.
No, see, that's how I ended up watching, like, I remember specifically watching this movie that I think had Burt Reynolds and Raquel Welch. I'd have to look it up, called The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing. And I'm not making that movie up, it exists. But there's so many old movies that I saw, on days that I would be homesick because you're right, because otherwise I had to watch soap operas.
And you're right about the comics. The comics that your parents brought home for you were usually very different than the comics you bought yourself.
Exactly.
That I can remember my mom sending my dad out to get me comic books, and he'd come back with Beetle Bailey and Archie and I think the Occult Files of Dr. Spectre. I think that's how I discovered that.
Yep. Yeah, that was a good one. All right, well, but we are here to talk about Defenders. We're going to talk today, folks, about Defenders as if we make it through the episode. We're going to talk about Defenders 69 to 71, which will bring us partway through the most unexpected lunatic saga of them all, Brian. It's the point at which we'll get to, artist turned writer Ed Hannigan, it seems to me, decided that what David Anthony Kraft was planning to do with Lunatic was so telegraphed that Hannigan was going to invent something completely batshit crazy because he figured, like we did, that the readers had already made, sorted it all out, and he decided to go off. Because I just don't feel like Kraft was planning this.
No, I agree. I think Hannigan looked at the title he was on and said, "Oh, it's the Defenders. I can get away with doing crazy shit."
Right.
And he does that.
Yeah, and again, especially because as we were reading through in Lunatic's previous appearances, it was painfully clear what was being planned, and I could be wrong. I mean, it could be that Kraft was planning it all along, but I somehow doubt that. It definitely seems to me Hannigan had come on to co-plot and co-write the Asgardian story that we had we previously covered, and it seems to me that this batshit crazy lunatic story was his way to wrap it up without doing something that would be expected. But you're right, because he's on Defenders, and why not?
I got to tell you, the lunatic stuff. Now, there are certain key Defender storylines, like the Six-Fingered Hand and the Headman Nebulon saga, which we've already covered, that I reread fairly regularly.
Right.
Maybe once a year, once every 2 years. I haven't read any of the lunatic stuff since I was a kid.
Me either. Right.
And in going back through and rereading it, I used to sit there and wonder, why does no one at Marvel do anything with Lunatic? And as an adult, going back rereading this stuff, I understand why no one at Marvel is chomping at the bit to write Lunatic.
Yes, I agree. Although what he does here is definitely more interesting than what Kraft was doing, but I certainly think that he could have just ignored Lunatic and just never come back to him, or had him. What would have been great if Hannigan had him go like the elf with the gun went, would just like get hit by a truck, and that's the end of the story. All right, so 69, the cover. What is the terrible secret of the Anything Man? And Nighthawk is grabbing Hulk, saying, "No, Hulk, stay back. He's the one foe we dare not fight." Interestingly enough, Brian, this issue, although fully in continuity, I mean, it's definitely not a fill-in, is yet still a fill-in because it's written by Mary Jo Duffy, later credited on most of her work as just Jo Duffy.
Right.
And the first issue of the Defenders, other than that one backup, written by a woman, which was rare in those days.
Yes.
Penciled by Herb Trimpe, and lettered by, I don't normally mention the letterer, but the inker is not listed. Oh, I'm sorry, Al Milgrom, the legendary Al Milgrom.
Who I got to work with on Doom Patrol.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was my inker on. Well, he was Keith Giffen's inker on that. That was a real treat. I fanboyed a little bit in communicating with him.
There you go. Well, he was inker and editor on this title, so that's good. Anyway, so we begin in Point Promontory, Maine, where the the Defenders have been before.
Oh, yes. If you go all the way back to our very first episode, and I believe our third episode, True Believers, you will know that this is the location of the dreaded Omegatron.
Yeah, well, this is where the Omegatron... Yes, exactly. Omegatron is done with at this point, and what's here is the remains of the giant robot version of Omegatron.
Right.
So Doctor Strange and Nighthawk are following footprints in the sand, and I don't think it's God carrying him. They're following it, which is all I can think about when I see this classic moment, that poem. So Nighthawk and Doctor Strange are, as Nighthawk says, playing Hardy Boys. Nighthawk was not a member of the Defenders when we last saw Omegatron.
Nope.
So that gives us the opportunity for Doctor Strange to give us the flashback retelling of the Omegatron saga. But the gist, folks, if you don't remember, is that Omegatron was this massive sort of robotic AI that was counting down to the end of the world, and Doctor Strange was able to use a spell to slow time to the point where it would be virtually stopped long enough for humanity to die out before it actually, detonated.
Right.
But now something has happened, and the Omegatron is powering up. Omegatron is not dead. I hated this idea when I started reading this issue because I was so sick of it. I was like, enough with freaking Omegatron.
But it's a classic Defenders villain. They have to bring back the classics once in a while.
Is it classic though? I mean,
I think it is. Yeah, it's the first one of the first villains they fought together as a team.
It is, but to me it was like it's done. However, as a one-off issue, this actually is pretty good.
It is.
Especially in the sort of drought of good Defender stories we've had, particularly last episode, the Asgardian thing was just too much for me.
I enjoyed the Omegatron one issue, one shot much more than I do the other two issues we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. All right. Well,
But anyway, Doc Strange, he figures out that, as Chris said, that the Omegatron is beginning to power up again. It's not dead. And he guesses that it has found someone to serve as a pawn in its deadly game of destruction.
So then we meet a young couple called Jeff and Hillary. They're playing tennis, and Hillary usually kicks Jeff's ass, but for some reason, she thinks he's been practicing because he's doing much better. And they go walking off, but we then see that the Omegatron's energy gauge is powering up a little bit more. To be succinct about it, Jeff comes back to the animal shelter. Well, Jeff and Hillary come back to the animal shelter where Hillary, I think, works. I'm not sure here. They do fundraising for it. Jeff works there, I guess. And he comes in, and for some reason, the animal shelter is the object of a robbery attempt. 3 guys are rifling through, and I'm going to say this again, the animal shelter, looking to steal their money because, as we all know, animal shelters are great repositories of massive amounts of cash. Not a liquor store or a convenience store, but an animal shelter. But Jeff comes in, he's assaulted by the thieves, and actually quickly makes short work of them, including being shot at and finding he's bulletproof.
He's bulletproof. There's no blood. He stops their car, smashes it. Apparently, he's got super speed, super strength. He's got Luke Cage's impervious skin. He's got all the powers.
Now, Brian, I'm going to pause for a moment because I just flipped pages to a double-page spread of advertisements that I want to mention.
Okay.
You know that I've been getting a kick out of a lot of these. One of them is a full-page ad for the Marvel Comics series, The Shogun Warriors.
Oh, yeah.
Based on the classic toys, and I have to tell you, the one and only Shogun Warrior that I owned was like one of the greatest toys I ever had.
Yeah.
Fired
I never
missiles
owned the
from
toys.
its fist. What's
never
that?
had the toy. I never had the toys, but I read the comics.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we'll have to, listeners, if you're out there, find Brian a Shogun Warrior and send it to us.
No. Brian doesn't need. Brian has turned 50 and is trying to downsize his shit.
But surely Brian's young son would like a Shogun Warrior.
He's got the equivalent. He's got the big Power Rangers toys.
That's crap.
So,
anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So then the other side is a page of posters that includes the McNichols, Christy McNichol on the shoulders of her brother Peter, the Coneheads, Farrah Fawcett, Linda Carter, Susan Anton, the Kiss Collage, and my favorite, the full-size poster of Cheryl Ladd in that leather jacket, unzipped.
I know that poster well.
I knew you would. And I have to say that this was 1978. 12-year-old Chris had that poster above his bed.
12-year-old Brian had Cheryl Tiegs, Farrah Fawcett, and the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders poster.
Yeah, well, of course you did.
And
yeah,
anyone who knows me knows I'm not a sports guy at all. I couldn't tell you anything about the Dallas Cowboys other than their 1978 cheerleaders.
Yeah, 12-year-old Brian thought cheerleading was an art form.
Yeah, exactly. It's still 50-year-old Brian thinks so as well.
But in any case, that Cheryl Ladd poster, man. So that was like, damn. All right. So we come back. Yes, so Jeff has stopped their car with his body. Hillary says, Jeff, I don't know how you did that. And I don't care. I'm so glad you're alive. Anyway, we see, of course, that Omegatron is still being powered up by Jeff's antics. And then finally we return to the Sanctum Sanctorum. The Defenders are reminiscing, Brian, about how good it feels to be back at the Sanctum.
But Hulk doesn't think it feels good because Hulk is there for a fight.
Exactly, and that's what I was just going to get to. And you want to read that bit of Hulk dialogue, Brian?
Yes. Hulk is here for a fight. Magician promised Hulk something to smash. And if Hulk doesn't get it soon, maybe he will start a magician's house.
Now, this is a petulant Hulk. Thank you, Joe Duffy, for that dialogue. Yeah, that was what I want more of from this comic is the Hulk getting pissy. So basically, Doctor Strange has been trying to figure out what's powering up Omegatron, because if Omegatron comes back to life, then of course he can destroy the whole world.
Right.
So Jeff decides, as you do, that in still wearing his tennis outfit, for some reason, that night he decides he looks through the newspaper to search for the place most likely to be robbed that night, and decides to put his theory that he now has superpowers to the test. Let's see. He goes down to the wharf, and these guys break in. The short version is...
they're robbing a marina. Because these are the dumbest criminals ever. First they rob a veterinarian animal shelter. Now they're robbing a marina. I live right next door to a marina. I'm here to tell you, they don't keep large quantities of cash on hand.
Well, I will say, though, that in this case, at least, unlike the veterinary shelter, the animal shelter, in this case, there is a race tomorrow. So there's a large cash prize in the safe. So at least these guys are smarter than the guys from earlier. But in any case, he goes to confront them. They shoot at him, and yet again, he's bulletproof. They go to escape, and he goes after them. In fact, even swimming after the boat that they're escaping on.
Yep.
I'm like, there must be better ways to do this. Anyway, he catches them. He's on an island. He beats them up, or he's on the shore anyway. And the Defenders show up. And of course, thanks to our friend Dollar Bill, Brian, what does Jeff think? He thinks the Defenders are there to recruit him.
That's right. Yes. Because he saw Dollar Bill's documentary show.
Exactly. But Nighthawk tells him that his powers are too dangerous to ever be used again.
And Jeff bristles at this. He says he's the strongest guy around, which pisses off the Hulk, because Hulk is the strongest one there is. And if Little Man doesn't shut up and listen to Bird Nose, Hulk is going to prove it.
Exactly. And once again, when Valkyrie tells him, no, Hulk, calm down, Hulk says, but Magician promised Hulk a fight.
Right. Because remember, they can't fight Jeff because the more he uses his powers,
the more it
energy
powers up
the
Omegatron.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't want Jeff to use his powers at all.
Right.
Now, Brian, another moment, another interlude here as we get to the letters page, featuring another letter from our friend Kurt Busiek. And when I say friend, I don't think I've ever met Kurt, but he's our friend on the internet, Kurt Busiek. And Kurt is still not happy with this book, although keeps reading it. 1978, Kurt Busiek says, the dynamic defenders ain't dynamic no more. Fact is, they're downright dull. To illustrate, dull writing, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he basically goes in, he disagrees with us, Brian. Dave Kraft has nice ideas, but the only good issues the defenders under him have been Scorpio and the Power Principle, which bored the shit out of me.
Right.
These were very preachy, power corrupt stories, and they were handled very well, but the non-preachy stories have been miserable. The documentary Disaster was a fantastic idea, but all it did was show us that Kraft can only write one character. That surly, uncommunicative, funny fellow that Nighthawk seems to be these days. But everybody in the Disaster acted like variations on Nighthawk. He's not wrong.
No, he's not wrong.
But then he goes on to say, dull art, even dull stories can be saved by making the book a pleasure to look at, if not to read. Sal Buscema and Don Perlin have been presenting the stories beautifully. They enhance the feel of the original plot to intense boredom. Anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, he goes on, let's see. And he complains that defenders have never actually been a non-team. If there is a writer at Marvel who knows what a non-team is, get him on the defenders, please. So Kurt is very unhappy. And I think at this point, we should reach out to Kurt and see if we can try to persuade him to come on and talk to us about why he hated the defenders so much when he was younger and why he kept reading it.
You know what? That's a great idea. We should. We should.
Anyway, obviously, folks, we're going to take a lot longer on this issue than the other two. But in any case...
What does that say for the Lunatic side?
Yeah, exactly. In any case, Jeff first takes on Hellcat, who keeps avoiding him because she's acrobatic. But eventually he gets a boot in her face. Hellcat is, or Nighthawk is upset about that. Jeff decks him. Doctor Strange is trying to persuade Hulk from kicking Jeff's ass.
And then even Aragorn, Valkyrie's winged horse, gets involved in the fight.
Yeah, exactly. Even Aragorn is trying to reason with Jeff.
Yep.
And then Jeff makes the biggest mistake of all. He hits the horse. And that's it for Hulk. Hulk
has had enough of this nonsense now.
And
nobody puts Aragorn in the corner in the previous issues.
So Omegatron is almost completely powered up. Doctor Strange has no choice. He actually uses magic to revert Hulk to Bruce Banner. But then Nighthawk is back up, and he's trying to reason with Jeff, and Jeff is just beating the tar out of him, which I will say he probably has coming.
Yeah, or at least the way Kraft has written him, he has this coming.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, what happens now, and I love this ending, is that because Nighthawk is not fighting back, and Jeff doesn't need his powers to fight Nighthawk. Jeff's powers drain out of him. He's on an island, small uninhabited island, and they leave him there.
Yeah.
Now they do come back, I guess. Let's see here. Oh, they leave him there until he begs Doctor Strange to take the powers, the connection to Omegatron away. Somehow, now that he wants that to happen, it does happen. And then, we have the ending where Dr. Banner says, I guess I was the Hulk during most of the battle. Who is Jeff? An ordinary man, a good man even, who was cursed with power beyond his desire or his control. Dr. Banner says, I see, because, of course, he's thinking about himself. Now, I just want to point out, Brian, that the hero and villain introduced in this comic is just named Jeff.
Yes. In true Defenders fashion.
He's just Jeff. Yes, the cover refers to him as the Anything Man, but really, he's just Jeff. And I wonder if Jeff ever appeared again, because again, we keep running across these things that I'd like to see,
Like Joe the Gorilla, remember him?
Like Joe the Gorilla, exactly. We'll have Jeff versus Joe. Anyway, number 70 now, we have Ed Hannigan coming in to write solo, pencils by Herb Trimpe, inks by Mike Esposito. And Brian, since you love Lunatic so much, you want to bring us into this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll mention is the cover. If you've been reading these along in single issues or on Comixology, or if you're reading the Marvel Essential Defenders Volume 4, as I am, you'll notice that the Hulk is much more prominent on the covers lately, whether he's involved in the book or not.
Right.
That is because at the time, the Hulk television show is a ratings blockbuster, and Marvel's cashing in on that. You'll soon see on the covers featuring Marvel's TV sensation, the Hulk, and people complain these days about Deadpool showing up in every comic or Wolverine showing up in every comic. That's an old tradition. I mean, that was going on in the 70s with the Hulk. Yeah. So yeah, we open with Valkyrie and Hellcat and Nighthawk on Aragorn, and they're coming home from the battle, back to the Sanctum Sanctorum, and they're flying over the city. And
they head back to the.
Then they go back to the Riding Academy.
Exactly.
They decide, yeah. And the Riding Academy is surrounded by people. And Kyle is wondering, are they mobsters? Are they reporters? He flies down to confront them and finds out, circling back around to a plot line that was introduced, I think, 2 episodes ago, that they are from the Justice Department. And they're here investigating tax evasion, stock manipulation, fraud, and, of course, the matter of Kyle Richmond, a.k.a. Nighthawk's reported death.
Exactly. So the thing is that it turned out that Kyle's former business manager, the guy who was running his company for him, was a crook.
Right.
And so Kyle himself, was initially suspected, and then it turned out that he was innocent, and they arrested his business manager instead. But now they're looking at him, and although we haven't seen their evidence, they seem to be genuinely doing their job and to genuinely think that Kyle Richmond is guilty of these crimes.
Right.
Then we get back, and there's mail call, and Valkyrie's gotten a piece of mail from Empire State University about her next class schedule, and there's an invitation to a midnight mixer. So we'll come back to that in a moment. We also come back and we see that Doctor Strange convinces Bruce Banner that he needs to help him save the world again, to become the Hulk again, which he does. Hulk and Doctor Strange transport themselves off to a place that Doctor Strange does not tell us where they are going, but we will see them again, friends. Then we have Kyle and Patsy and Valkyrie heading off to that mixer that was mentioned.
Right.
And they're met by Professor Turk. And
who remember is Lunatic.
Right. Who remember is Lunatic. And Dollar Bill. And again, they have not revealed that he's Lunatic, but anyone reading the comic at this point certainly knows he's Lunatic.
Right.
And Dollar Bill, who now are roommates for some reason. We don't have any idea why they might be roommates, except to keep Dollar Bill in the story, which is not doing anybody any favors.
No.
Then Ledge, who was beaten up by Lunatic and hospitalized, comes over and accuses Professor Turk of being Lunatic. He's convinced. He's furious. Professor Turk is mad. He goes outside. And Valkyrie thinks, hey, this is potentially true. And she and Patsy go outside looking for Professor Turk, and they see Lunatik running away.
Right.
Now, should we cover the rest of this issue in?
I can cover it real quick.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Once again, Valkyrie and Hellcat confront Lunatik. They fight. Nighthawk shows up, and he finds another Lunatik.
Well, and Hellcat and Valkyrie are split up.
Right, and they're both fighting lunatics.
Now, we, the reader, think that Lunatik continues to get away from them.
Right.
But that's not what happens, Brian.
No, it's not what happens. Because as they each make work of the lunatics, they find that they have indeed fought 3 different lunatics, identical to each other. And then, of course, Chris, there's the big reveal. They ask Professor Turk if he can make any sense out of this, and he says, "Indeed I can, dear Valkyrie. I'm ready to give myself up, for I am Lunatic." I am Spartacus. No,
I am Spartacus. I am Lunatic. And then we learn that this is only the beginning of a 4-part Lunatic epic.
That no one demanded,
because no one demanded it. Excelsior, true believers. And again, I'm not going to lie, it was fun to read that issue, but it was like, but then when I got to the point where I found out it was the first of 4 issues, I was like, come on now. You could have wrapped it up in that issue. But in any case, we're back. Ed Hannigan, issue 71.
I'm going to let you tell folks about that because I have to get a Kleenex and blow my nose, and I don't want to do that into the microphone.
I think you should do it on the microphone. But anyway, issue 71, again written by Ed Hannigan, illustrated in this case by Herb Trimpe and Jack Abel, another comics legend who's been there for a while. They're in a classroom at Empire State University where Professor Turk is making his case. The 3 lunatics are tied up in the corner. Ledge is essentially testifying, and Professor Turk is making his case, explaining the history. So what we get at this point, and this is
some bizarre shit.
It's some bizarre shit, and apparently depicted in issues 45 and 46 of Marvel Premiere. Now, Brian, those issues, if I'm not mistaken, this is a story that featured Manwolf, of all characters.
So, here, I'll Google it while you're giving the...
There you go.
Folks, I'll look it up here real quick.
So, essentially, in this parallel reality, there was a kingdom ruled by Arison Turk, and Professor Turk's name is Harrison Turk. And I'm not sure if that was the name that he used in that story, or if they're now sort of redoing it. But in any case, Manwolf led a rebellion against Arison Turk, and somehow Arison Turk escaped. And when he escaped through some kind of a, portal. Let's just leave it at that. And when he went through
and you are right. That was a 2-part Manwolf saga. It was written by David Anthony Kraft.
There you go.
And it turns out Lunatic actually appeared in those issues, something I did not remember until just now.
Me either. I don't think that the Lunatic saga will ever be collected, but if it were, it should include them. So maybe Kraft did intend this to be Lunatic's origin all along. I don't know. That's an interesting thing. If he did intend for it, there was no hint earlier that there was anything more interesting going on. But in any case, Arison Turk goes through the portal, and something goes horribly wrong, and he is fractured through these sort of mirrors in time-space, and his personality, his body and mind, are splintered and scattered all over the multiverse, basically. The first one of those pieces to land on quote-unquote our Earth is the one who is Professor Turk. But apparently he was quickly followed by 2 more. who the first one of which is the lunatic that we've seen, I think.
Right.
The one who beats up people. Anyway, it's part of his personality that was splintered off and became that lunatic. The other two that showed up, because now there are four, including Professor Turk, took that lunatic as their inspiration. I'm just explaining it because it's complicated.
It's convoluted.
Yes, took that lunatic as their inspiration, and that's how we ended up with three of them. But they're all variations or pieces of Professor Turk, a.k.a. Arison Turk, former ruler of this weird dimension where Man-Wolf fought. So most of this issue is Professor Turk telling this story and then arguing with the Defenders about the story itself until we get back to the Sanctum Sanctorum.
That's right. Now, here's a nice touch.
Yep.
What I like about this, remember, Doctor Strange and Hulk have gone off on some secret mission.
Exactly.
So they go to Clea, and here she takes prominence again. You know, people back then often just viewed her as Doctor Strange's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
But she was a master of the mystic arts as well.
Correct. Yeah. Well, and she even says at a certain point, we have a thought balloon saying, you know, Stephen has left me to languish behind again in spite of his promises. I wonder if I could join the Defenders. I'm sure I could hold my own if they would have me.
That's right.
Now, what's interesting about that, Brian, is I was like, oh yeah, Clea, that's an interesting thought process. You could totally join. You could hold your own. And indeed, they come to ask her. We have a 3-panel diversion back into the federal agents, but we'll come back to that.
Right.
And they come to ask her to help them find Professor Turk's home dimension, so that Professor Turk and the 3 lunatics can all be brought back there, so the Defenders can find out the truth. And even though a page earlier, Clea was feeling like, you know, gee, Doctor Strange constantly is leaving me behind because, you know, he treats me like I can't hold my own. And then she does the same thing to Wong. Like, literally the next page. And I was like, oh, man, you know, Wong. Anyway, we get to this world, and Hellcat says, golly gee willikers. And I read that, and I thought, Brian must have loved that.
Yeah, I didn't care for Hellcat. As I said, I don't care for Hellcat, period, until J.M. DeMatteis gets his hands on her. And then he takes this annoying one-dimensional character and really makes her something, gives her agency in a way that no writer has done since as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly Warren Ellis did horrible things to her in his Hellstorm run, but...
yeah, I mean, you know, that's a great run, but it's not so great for Hellcat's character.
No, it's very bad for her. Anyway, we get to this weird parallel world. You know, Nighthawk is flying around and the people are yelling their language, which we don't get translated. But they see him and they're alarmed by his presence, and we'll find out shortly that that's because he has wings, and the current ruler of this world has an army that flies on these giant winged creatures, the King's Air Force. Again, I'm making short work of this at this point.
Yeah, it's a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, it's a lot of running around.
The King's birded Air Force shows up, and they attack, and the Defenders and the villagers fight back.
The lunatics, no surprise, including Professor Turk, betray the Defenders. Professor Turk whacks Hellcat on the head with a log.
Yep, and they capture Hellcat.
They capture Hellcat and Valkyrie.
Right, but then, meanwhile...
Oh, no, Valkyrie, I'm sorry, they capture Hellcat and Valkyrie is pursuing them.
Right.
But yes, meanwhile,
we see these two figures watching the battle unfold. One of them is this Gandalf-esque old man, and the other one is this furry-looking ape creature. And the furry-looking ape creature leaps into the air and begins to turn into the Incredible Hulk. Is this an illusion? No, it seems to be the real Hulk, judging from the dialogue, because he says, "Look out, Birdmen! Hulk is here to smash," and smash he does. And he makes short work of the King's Air Force, and it is then revealed that the old man and the furry ape thing were in fact Doctor Strange and Hulk in disguise. They have also come to this dimension on that mysterious quest of theirs.
Exactly. And we leave off on Clea talking about the fact that Hellcat and Valkyrie have disappeared, along with the 4 lunatics. And we have Doctor Strange, Hulk, Clea, and Nighthawk leading into the next issue and our next episode. We're wrapping up super quick today, Brian, because we only did the 3 issues. But I figure that we should cut it short because of your illness, and hopefully you'll be feeling better next week. I will also say, though, that the back cover of this issue, unlike previous issues, which most Marvel comics in this era had the same back cover, which was the make money, get prizes with fast-selling American seeds.
Oh, yes, I remember that ad.
And I actually sold those seeds in my neighborhood, and didn't sell many of them. They ended up in my garage. So they were not indeed fast selling as advertised. But this issue has the back cover of Battlestar Galactica merchandise, including a fantastic Battlestar Galactica t-shirt. Actually, they're all t-shirts. I see now they're 5 different designs, but they had the one that is shown as the shirt, has all the cast on it. And I wish that I could just clip this now and order them. Not the one with fucking Boxy on it, though.
No,
not Boxy was the kid. What was the name of the little robot dog?
Muffet.
There you go. Not the one with Muffet.
I'm guessing you were an Apollo kid.
Of course, I was an Apollo kid. I'm guessing you were Starbuck.
I was Starbuck.
How did I know that? This is everything anybody who knows anything about the 70s needs to know about Brian and Chris, by the way.
Oh, yeah, Chris grew up on Luke Skywalker and Apollo. I grew up on Han Solo and Starbuck. Our courses were set for life.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of liked, I would say I liked Han Solo better. I really liked Chewbacca the best.
Yeah.
But
I have a feeling that's who your 3 Guys with Beards co-host Jim Moore. I imagine that's who he identified with as a kid.
But when it came to Battlestar Galactica, it was always Apollo and Athena for me, where I'm sure you were more Starbuck and Cassiopeia.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because again, I was focused on the people who approach things with wisdom and reason. and that's just all we need to know.
The entire course of our lives were set with these fictional characters.
See, it's too bad Mary's not there right now, because she would be loving this part of the conversation.
She would, absolutely.
Anyway, all right, well, Starbuck, we'll sign off now.
All right, Apollo. Before we do that, we just want to remind folks, if you enjoy our show, you might also enjoy 3 Guys with Beards. That's a show that Chris co-hosts with Jim Moore and Jonathan Mayberry. And you might also dig the Horror Show with Brian Keene. That's me with Mary Sangiovanni, Dave Thomas, and Mike Lombardo. Both of those shows air via the Project Entertainment Network wherever you're listening to Defenders Dialogue. So that's iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play Music, everywhere. Also, a quick plug for our engineer, Tommy Clark. He makes us sound good every week. You can check out his podcast, The Necrocasticon. That's also available via the Project Entertainment Network. And Chris, what do you always say around this time?
Brian, I always say, Excelsior, true believers. And we're nothing if not that.
You know what? Don't hit stop yet.
Oh, okay.
Saying Excelsior, true believers, of course, makes me think of Stan Lee.
You know what? I'm glad you said it, because I almost said it. Go ahead.
Well, we're gonna be covering this on next week's episode of the Horror Show. But if you're a fan of Marvel Comics, you're a fan of Stan Lee, and I know there's some question as to how Stan treated some of his co-creators, but regardless, Stan Lee is in a bad place right now. There's full coverage of it at Bleeding Cool. I recommend Bleeding Cool's coverage more than the Hollywood Reporters or Comics Beat or anybody else, and that's because I know behind the scenes just how in touch with the principals Bleeding Cool has been on this story. I mean, we're looking at a very clearly documented case of elder abuse here, of people taking advantage of Stan Lee at age 95.
Yeah, I mean, look, there seems to be no question. Of elder abuse, but it seems, again, like we're far away. We're thousands of miles away from this situation. I don't know Stan. I've met him. I don't know any of the people involved in it. So I want to be sort of careful about this. But it seems to me that if people are guilty of elder abuse in this situation, from everything I'm reading from Bleeding Cool, from Hollywood Reporter, from a number of places, it seems to me coming from every side. It seems like there's no one who has the ability to look out for Stan's well-being who is actually looking out for Stan's well-being. It seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, his wife Joni passed, and he's sort of been left alone now with these people. And I like I said, we'll cover it more on the horror show because I'm not as worried about getting sued as you are. But
right.
Basically, he's got people picking over his carcass, and the man's not dead yet. He's got people fighting for his sizable fortune and his sizable intellectual property that he owns.
Or a piece. Everybody wants a piece.
Yeah, and it's and it's horrific.
Yeah, it's crazy that, and again, I think I'm glad we talked about this today. Hopefully people didn't turn off. But it's crazy that anyone could look at video that was posted over the weekend, or this week, I should say, from the weekend, and not think this is wrong. It's wrong. I mean, not necessarily wrong. If he wants to go and is in his right mind and he wants to go to something, then sure. If this is what he actually wants, go. But for him to spend all day doing that at 95 years old, I mean, I have an uncle who's 92. My father-in-law is 91. My 91-year-old father-in-law is a machinist who owns his own machine shop, and he still, at 91, works 5 days a week. It's his own business, and he goes of his own accord. He works 5 days a week on machines, and it keeps him alive, Brian. So I understand that. But if you saw video of him at the job, it would not look like what it looks like when you see video of Stan at this convention this weekend.
Right.
So there's a difference between an elderly man who wants to continue to work because it's what rewards him and makes him feel alive or what have you, and someone who is going through the motions because they're being told that's what they're supposed to do, or even that they've said that they want to do it, but nobody says, I want to do it, to kill myself. I mean, that video is horrifying.
It is. And, a lot of the reports, like I said, I for my money, I think Bleeding Cool has the most comprehensive coverage. Some of the stuff they've revealed over the last few days, beyond that video,
right.
other reports that the rest of the press doesn't seem to be picking up on. It's horrific. And, I don't know what any of us can do to actually help the man other than, make people aware of what's happening.
Yeah, no, it's very sad.
It is.
It's very sad. So anyway, thoughts go out to Stan, and it's my hope that there's someone in that circle who actually has his best interests at heart and can step in and try to prevent him from being exploited that way. But we'll see. We
need to send Jim Steranko in there.
I mean, he can parachute in though.
Yeah, well, that motherfucker though. I mean, that he's like a real life Nick Fury.
Yeah.
I mean, he could save Stan.
All right. Well, by extraction, I mean, he can go in and extract Stan. So,
all right.
Good. Jim Steranko, please. So, we're appealing to you to extract Stan.
Yes. So, absolutely, Excelsior, true believers.
Excelsior, true believers.
All right. We'll see you next week, folks.
Three Guys with Beards. The Project Entertainment Network store, featuring t-shirts, mugs, stickers, hoodies and more from your favorite Project Entertainment Network podcasts.
Ink Stain Scribbler's Rest.
The Horror Show with Brian Keene.
Why not show your loyalty by wearing a cool product from the podcast group and show off to your friends?
It Cooks.
Armcast.
The Mondo Method Monster Attack.
Necrocastical.
Go to projectentertainmentnetwork.com and click on the store tab for more details.
The Liars Club podcast.
Bizarre.
The Lunch Ladies Book Club.
Matters of Faith.
The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with stuff from the best podcasts on the internet.
The Curtain Jerkers.
Buttercup of Doom.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.